Body horror is the mutilation of the human body. It is the violation and revulsion you feel when you see horrific human transformations or abnormal changes. Not death, arguably worse, and usually presented in unrealistic and nightmarish ways, with its implications reaching parts of the human psyche and breaking into psychological horror. It has layers and it's presented in different ways throughout media, with some using elements of body horror and others making it the main focus. But let's start at the top and work our way down. Body horror, for me, separates itself into two categories: witnessing it and experiencing it. Seeing body horror is a fairly common thing, but it gets progressively more disturbing the further you go into psychological horror. John Carpenter's 1982 version of The Thing has many transformation scenes where the shape-shifting alien takes on another form, and you catch it mid-transformation. You watch as it grows tentacles and strange limbs and things that look like other things, but it's difficult to really tell what it is, where this horrific transformation is going. But it's not human, and the humans in the film show it no sympathy. Even things like Dead Space necromorphs have a level of body horror to them once you realize they're the crew of the Ishimura. The reason why there's no humans on board. The reason why there's skin-colored growths everywhere. You've met the crew, you're killing them. The transformation scenes, especially at the start of Dead Space 2, really drive home what makes a necromorph a necromorph.
I found Isaac Clarke. Repeat, I have him.
Great work, Franco. Be careful. He's been out a long time.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Good. Steady. We gotta get you out of this straitjacket. Where am I? Alright, I know you're confused right now. I can explain everything, but you gotta trust me, okay? Listen, you're in terrible danger.
But again, like the alien in The Thing, no mercy is shown to these creatures. Their humanity is gone and they face a similar fate to The Thing's shape-shifting alien. Where things start to get more intense is with System Shock 2. The game is set aboard the spaceship Von Braun, and as the player character, you arise from cryosleep to find the ship has been overtaken by a worm-like virus that's affecting the crew. The crew members you find, the hybrids, have their bodies hijacked by this virus that's known as the Many.
Run. They see you. Run.
It taps into their central nervous system and controls them like puppets. But inside the grotesque outer shells, the minds of the crew are still aware of what they're doing, even if they're unwilling to do it.
Hurry. Run.
They beg for death, screaming to you to kill them as they open fire or try to beat you down against their will. Their humanity is there, inside, but to set it free once again, the only merciful thing to do is to grant them the death they seek. The further you go into body horror, the more ties with psychological horror there are. In Sanitarium, you encounter a village full of mutilated children. Their bodies changed dramatically by the unseen force known as Mother. They live alone as a community in the burnt-out town where all the adults have seemingly gone missing. They play games to their abilities, with some practically crippled by the mutations, and the saddest thing of all is how they don't know any better, that they shouldn't be like that. The childlike mind adapts and they love Mother, the Force doing this to them. It's incredibly disturbing. And possibly the most disturbing one comes from Discover My Body, a game where in a world full of loneliness, a strange procedure is gaining traction, with the goal to eliminate loneliness by being infused with a fungi to experience a sense of community with it. You play as a medical student who has to help someone achieve this union by helping them with a flowering. The patient communicates with you all the way through the procedure, continuing even when their body has changed so much they can't use their mouth to communicate any longer. But thanks to the miracle of science, their thoughts are turned to speech so that they can describe to you what's happening. And through this completely unsettling procedure, they are so enthusiastic to explain to you what's happening to them, which is what takes up majority of the gameplay, learning together as you scan their body and they explain the changes to you. Things like inhibitors that prevent the natural rejection of such an operation in the human body, by the human body, to the human body. It personally makes my skin crawl. The flowering gets completed, nobody is saved, and you watched as this person's humanity was added into the hive mind created by the infection that you helped spread. Discover My Body is one of the most disturbing games I've ever played. And with it, we've reached the end of the top layer. Witnessing body horror is one thing, it's no better or worse than what's to come, but the feelings you get are different. What we're looking at now is body horror happening to the character you're playing as, and to that extension, you. Body horror is sometimes a slow change, and sometimes a brutal act. Outlast has a wide cast of mutilated patients, or variants as they're referred to, walking the halls of the Mount Massive Asylum, their bodies broken along with their minds, as part of an awful experiment subjected on them by a corrupt corporation. And despite the fact that some attack you, there's still a sense of sympathy as well as revulsion that's brought about by the people you see hiding under their beds or cowering in the corners of their rooms. You feel sorry for them, but you're afraid of being them. By the time you reach the holding cells, it becomes obvious how this was something forced onto them, and whilst it's difficult to look at them without projecting their ailments onto yourself, it's much harder to imagine what they're going through. But we're here to talk about the Groom, Eddie Gluskin. He's introduced as an antagonist around the halfway point of Outlast's brilliant DLC, Whistleblower. But you meet him at the start of the game before he's dragged off to the morphogenic engine to be tested. He begs for help, but you can't help him.
Hey, calm yourself. This is a high security...
It's all right, Agent. Mr. Park was just surprised.
And when you meet him later in the game, he's changed radically. The morphogenic engine bringing out an obsession in him with finding the perfect partner, but his idea of the perfect partner is marred by the material he has to work with. Around his area of flowery traditional quotes and sayings, marriage is a beautiful thing, and he seeks to wed, but on the tables nearby are the mutilated remains of male patients who have gone through an unbearably crude sexual reassignment surgery, botched at the hands of Eddie Gluskin himself. He's more of an artist than a surgeon, but not trained in either. Regardless, if he can't find a bride in this all-male asylum, then he'll make one. And that's where Waylon Park, the player character, is brought into it. He sets his sights on you. The concept alone brings about bodily dysphoria in your male character. The idea of being made forcibly into a gender you don't envision yourself as is already deeply personally upsetting, but to have it brutally done to you at the hands of someone stronger, more powerful, and as creepy as Eddie Gluskin, with his disturbing romantic and sexual advances, is hard to stomach. Him trying to serenade you into something that will almost certainly kill you makes this probably the hardest scene in the game. But what makes a lot of body horror so personal and violating is how a great deal of it can be projected onto yourself. When you see someone missing an arm, you may involuntarily wonder what life is like without it. It's instinctual. The ER patient Typhon presents a character who, after going on a hiking holiday, is injured and awakens in a hospital with no arms. It feels like you were robbed, and a great deal of the game is you trying to accomplish goals using just your legs. It's hard to watch your character struggle in these situations, but as the game goes on, the bridge between the short violation of having your arms removed gives away to the sensation that it wasn't the worst thing to befall you. A slower, more creeping dread occurs in Darkwood, Barbertine, and David Cronenberg's The Fly, where the characters in these stories discover they're slowly changing, and in different ways. The Fly is told scientifically, through the lens of someone with a brilliant discovery, whose relationship with a girl is torn apart when they realize their body is slowly changing. Barbertine's is told without any dialogue and presented as a distortion of the perception of the self, through body horror, with their appearance changing drastically through how they see themselves as someone suffering with body image issues. And Darkwood's body horror is revealed to the player slowly. You figure out bit by bit that the howling forest that's claimed so many, created so many mutants and warped the very earth, the one you're stuck inside, has affected you too. You don't need to eat food because you don't get hungry, and gathering mushrooms and injecting them into yourself gives you benefits and side effects. You've changed. But leaving the gore behind almost entirely and going to that extreme other end of the spectrum, there's Soma, a game that takes body horror to the existential level. Heavy spoilers ahead. Simon Jarrett is a normal guy living in Toronto 2015, who after getting into a car accident has his brain scanned in an experimental procedure that changes the shape of his life, or at least one of them.
Hello? Mr. Munchie? Did something go wrong?
He dies shortly after the brain scan, but the scan lives on, and in the year 2104, his consciousness is reawakened.
What the hell is this place? How did I get here?
A lot has changed in the last century, and after an apocalyptic event leaves the Earth desolate, things get increasingly desperate in the underwater research labs of Pathos 2. Simon awakens to find that his mind has been implanted in a cortex chip, a tiny robotic device that's inserted into the spinal column of a dead female worker. But this is a slow reveal, with his perception of himself changing as his brain comes to terms with things. Why can he breathe underwater? Why does his body have a flashlight? And it all comes tumbling down as you realize that despite feeling human, Simon is a robot now.
What the hell? How is this possible? This is insane!
And a lot of the game is him trying to come to terms with his perception of himself, with his friend Catherine, who's a consciousness placed inside a door-opening tool. The two ask over and over what it means to be human, with Pathos 2's AI trying desperately to preserve life any way it can, even creating horrific breathing corpses by preventing death in the start of Pathos 2, infusing their bodies with machinery and black gel that mutates their skin in a warped attempt to keep them alive, even if it doesn't know what life really is. Are these people still people? Is Simon? Body horror toys with your feelings. It makes you uncomfortable and forces you to deal with things you'd rather not. Thanks for watching today's video. It was a rough one for sure, and whilst I don't really know what I'm going to do next time, I hope you guys will stick around to watch it. If you're interested in seeing more individual reviews, there's a collection of written ones on Patreon free to view for all, but if you join up you can see the ones I'm working on for Halloween. There's about 6 of them right now, and all the other updates and special videos I do for Patreon when I can. Anyway, Thanks for watching.